Hello. Thanks for that. I'm Heiko. I work for Thoughtworks. I'm going to talk about operationalizing AI for business impact. This picture got taken late last year before I tried to put an AI application into production. As you can tell, I've aged about 2 decades since then, so I'll tell you all about that. Now, as you can possibly imagine, like the amount of stuff that is just going on in the looking glass, all the technologies that are popping up around generative AI or AI in general is quite staggering. So this stuff is moving at quite the rate at the moment. So it's about 42 kind of trends on there. And the interesting thing about them, and I'm not going to talk about all of them one by one because we'll be here all day, I think, but the interesting thing about them is the themes underneath them. So all those 42 trends, they span the entire gamut, the entire life cycle of putting an application into production. So like making it slightly better, making sure it doesn't horrifically fall over, making sure that it doesn't produce anything illegal, making sure it doesn't cost a fortune, and like the ability to test it and put it into prod. So like as organizations have gone from like the hype of November 2022 when ChatGPT came out, now those proof of concepts are really moving into production and people are finding challenges all across the life cycle. So that's great. And there's also the kind of a reason why they span that entire life cycle, and that is that the failure rate tends to be a lot higher of these projects than most projects in general. So this is a quote I've stolen from the Harvard Business Review. It's not particularly scientific, but they reckon that most AI projects fail, about 80% of them, which is a quite high rate. And about double the rate of like the IT projects of the last decade. So a couple of other voices out there, and like some of the things that we've captured as well, they go even further and they say that about 90% of Gen AI proof of concepts fail before making it anywhere useful, which is quite alarming, really. It also is a testament to the fact that we don't, as software professionals, we don't quite understand how to deal with these things yet. There's a couple of signals that indicate that, and a couple of things that we have learned and we are sharing in the looking glass to like counteract that and hopefully make you be successful to put your own application into production, because they are useful in the end. So the signals and challenges that we've captured here are things that we've learned across our industry experience, across all the clients we have globally. And the first one is really about data quality. This sounds really basic, but people say things like garbage in, garbage out a lot. And that is 100% true. Like it's all about curation of data architecture, making sure that the quality is there, that these applications can benefit and profit from it. Because if the data is not there, they're not going to do anything useful. It sounds like a very basic observation, but it is really true. It also means that things like synthetic data or trends that we've captured like that on the looking glass when you read it become more and more important, because these applications really, like, they get their value from interacting with customer data, PII, and all these things are highly sensitive. So we got to find new ways to make sure that we don't expose ourselves to harm by having access to that kind of information. The second thing is really all about like evaluation and control. And until just recently, like it wasn't that obvious to me that how these systems are non-deterministic in nature and what the impact of that is. But like to bring that to life, you can't just deploy a Gen AI application into production and run a test case or a test suite and have that go red or green and you know it works. That's not how this works, right? It will behave in different ways. It will not act the same way if you prompt it again. So you got to shift your mindset towards more running not one test suite, but 5 or 10 and creating a probability distribution over it, so that it really detaches this idea of reliability or it producing something, an output that's reliable, and correctness, and that output is actually meaningful. That observation is quite powerful. So a couple of things that we captured on the looking glass that are trying to deal with that fact. And the first one is that you might have heard is eval, so the ability to reason about what the output is. There's even fancy trends like feeding the output of one large language model into another, using that as a judge. I think it's a useful technique we've just used in the past. And then there's also the concept of guardrails, or making sure whatever gets produced doesn't, talk about competitors or doesn't say something blatantly illegal or like something that contains blasphemy. So there's things that you can build in. The second thing about evaluation and control is people say that this ecosystem is moving incredibly fast and is comparable to like the JavaScript ecosystem of maybe 10 years ago. I can 100% confirm that. Applications, libraries change all the time. Sometimes they change while you try to compile your application. It is quite staggering. So this stuff moves at quite the rate, but that also means that it is pretty certain that whatever gets put into production today is probably going to be tech debt in 3 to 5 years' time and will have to be replaced if the past experiences with the JavaScript ecosystem are any indication. The third one is all about mismatched expectations. Specifically Gen AI systems or large language model systems, it is really easy to anthropomorphize them. It is worthwhile reminding ourselves that these things are not sentient. They just produce something that is probabilistic and that looks like it might be meaningful to somebody, but they do not by definition care about whether that output is correct. Always keep that in mind. They're not there yet. Maybe in 3 to 5 years' time, artificial general intelligence will be there and they will be sentient, but at the moment they are not, I can assure you. And you got to make sure you've got a human in the loop, no matter what you do. That's also true for agentic AI. That's the thing that everyone talks about at the moment. So this idea of having an AI system like make its own decisions, do reasoning, invoke tools, do things independently. People underestimate what the impact is of them being in the loop and prompting them, even subconsciously. So if you deploy them into production and you expect them to just do the right thing on their own, they probably will disappoint you. So I've pulled out a couple of trends out of the looking glass. We talked about a whole bunch of them already. We talked about evaluation and control and guardrails. We talked about AI agents just then, or this idea of like having them go away and be autonomous and produce something meaningful. One of the things that I've been operating, or that I've been looking at a lot is LLM ops. So this idea of applying concepts we've learned out of the DevOps movement to large language model applications and making them more robust. That is something that is really valuable. And I've also pulled out regulation, like even just 2 weeks ago, like with DeepSeek being announced and the New South Wales government banning access to it for their employees. Always make sure you don't get on the wrong side of regulation in general. Now, I've pulled out a very Thoughtworks thing as well of this that we haven't talked about, and that's AI-first software engineering or AI-assisted software engineering. Everyone's turned on their co-pilots now or their coding assistants, and I think that's great. People get a lot of value out of that. But what we've learned across our clients is that it's really more about just like improving the physical act of typing in code. It is about like improving across the life cycle in requirements gathering, in testing, in user persona generation. So that's where we think the big potential there is. Now, what can you do to actually make sure that whatever you've built makes it into production is actually useful? There's a couple of things that we've learned. The first one is about a strategy, and having an AI strategy doesn't mean you need to produce a gigantic document that is like 20 pages long that covers like the now, next, and later of everything. It's just really about having an actionable plan on how you're going to be dealing with AI systems in your ecosystem. That can also prevent things like shadow AI and things popping up just on corporate credit cards. That's a lot more prevalent in this space than in any other spaces that I've seen in the last 10 years. The second thing really is about focusing on the reliability of your systems and making sure that the data quality is there for those Gen AI applications or large language model applications to take the best advantage of them. The third thing is really close to my heart, and that is pay close attention to cost. This stuff is still very rough around the edges. It's all very new. There's a whole host of amazing observability tools out that you can turn on. The instruments, everything, you can see everything. You can feed the output of one LLM application into another as a judge. And you can run like 15 prompts at the same time and pick the best possible outcome. The problem is if you put that into production and don't tweak it, it will become really expensive really, really quickly. And people are experiencing bill shock that is not unlike when people first went to the cloud and just did lift and shift. So be mindful of that. And the last one is avoiding the substitution myth. And I've mentioned that before, and it's easy to anthropomorphize large language models and Gen AI applications in general, but people really underestimate the impact they have by prompting them and being the human in the loop. If you take the human out of the loop, things get a lot more non-deterministic, and it is a lot less likely to be a reliable outcome that actually makes sense. So do not underestimate the people involved. And at the moment, maybe in 3 to 5 years' time, when AGI is here, everything can be done by a machine. At the moment, it cannot. Just be aware of that. For the breakout sessions, if you want to talk about just some inspiration of things that we've done successfully, here's a story out of Pexa. I wasn't on the Pexa account. I haven't done this, but Mara, for example, has. She can talk to you all about this. But how do you make things successful? How do you deploy applications that are actually meaningful? And in this case, the answer is rapidly using lean product development techniques. We did this in 8 weeks. It produced something meaningful that is an assistant for employees of Pexa in a highly regulated environment. I might be butchering the story. People might be here. You can correct me. if you want. But that's the secret. With fast feedback loops, make sure those things are in production in front of your customers. And one of the follow-on effects of like correctness and reliability not necessarily being the same dimension means you have to have really fast feedback loops and get this stuff in front of your customers even faster than any other application you've ever touched. So looking forward to chatting to you in the breakout rooms about that. And thank you for listening to it.